With only one full day of campaigning to go before the Brexit referendum, British Prime Minister David Cameron yesterday resorted to a desperate appeal to older British voters. With the official PM residence of 10 Downing Street as a backdrop, Cameron, passionately urged Britons to vote on Thursday to remain in the EU, citing economic, security and legacy, "it's for the children" arguments, all standard bromides that have failed to stop the momentum for the Leave Brexit side. The left-wing New Statesman noted, in a headline, David Cameron's surprise intervention shows just how worried Remain are. The June 21 article by Stephen Bush carried this subtitle, "Using the door of Downing Street in this way is a tactic born out of desperation." In a statement designed to win over elderly voters and reinforce fears about the economic consequence of a Leave vote in Thursday's referendum, noted Bush, Cameron spoke outside 10 Downing Street, the first example in modern times of a Prime Minister using the paraphernalia of his office in election time, though the podium appeared without Whitehall's branding and was paid for by Britain Stronger in Europe, not the government. What the New Statesman reporter didn't mention is that the pro-EU lobbying group Britain Stronger in Europe is really a front for Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, Citigroup, and other financial behemoths that stand to lose if the Brexit goes through, and stand to keep their privileged positions and huge gravy train going, if Brits can be frightened into remaining in the EU. However, the too-big-to-fail bankster connection to the Remain side goes far beyond merely funding the public face of the anti-Brexit campaign. Goldman Sachs and the other giant banks have an outsized influence in terms of the large number of their people who have been placed in positions of power throughout institutions of the European Union and the national governments of its member nations. Take, for instance, Goldman Sachs, the infamous vampire squid. In the run-up to the referendum, European Central Bank President Mario Draghi issued warnings that a British exit from the EU would have serious negative consequences for both Britain and Europe. Likewise, Bank of England Chief Mark Carney has weighed in on the issue, inappropriately, and illegally, some charge, urging a Remain vote on the national referendum. What the establishment media fail to note is that when Draghi and Carney speak they are really speaking for Goldman Sachs, which both of them served in top executive capacities, before recently going into public service. Both men are also creatures of Bilderberg, the ultra-secret group of kingmakers that just happened to hold its annual closed-door conference 11 days before the Brexit vote. It's not that the reporters and commentators of the prestige press are unaware of this connection between the globalist megabanks and their EU political cronies. Their news organizations were, as always, well represented at the secret event. Martin Wolf, considered to be the Dean of Media Representatives at Bilderberg, is the chief economics commentator for the very influential Financial Times. Of course, he is not about to out his fellow Bilderbergers or point out the huge conflicts of interest and potential for corruption inherent in the numerous decisions they make affecting their banking business cronies. To the contrary, Wolf covers for them and provides pro-EU/anti-Brexit diatribes that are parlayed from the pages of the Financial Times to other media organs. Immediately following the Bilderberg Group confab in Dresden, Germany, June the 9th to the 12th, Wolf penned a pro-Remain June 14th op-ed entitled "Brexit Imperils the Confidence of Strangers." He followed that up 2 days later with another similar screed, "Why I Believe Britain Belongs in Europe," which, among other things, repeats the standard propaganda ploy of falsely equating the EU with Europe. The implication, of course, is that if one rejects the recently constructed, and constantly morphing, EU political institutions, one is also rejecting the culture, history, and legacy of Europe, which, of course, is not the case. In his last-ditch Project Fear speech on the doorstep of 10 Downing Street, Cameron warned that a vote for Brexit would lock Britain into an irreversible decision to leave Europe. So, he urged voters to think about the hopes and dreams of your children and grandchildren. They know their chances to work, to travel, to build the sort of open and successful society they want to live in, rests on this outcome, he said. And remember, they can't undo the decision we take. If we vote out, that's it. It is irreversible. We will leave Europe, for good. And the next generation will have to live with the consequences far longer than the rest of us. The Prime Minister's arguments were not new and are unlikely to hold significant sway with voters. The points he made in his appeal apply equally, if not with more force, to the other side. The Brexit has garnered such a strong following because so many British voters realise this could be their last chance to save a future in England for their children and grandchildren. If they fail to pull out now and fail to recover their sovereignty, their laws, their economy, and their borders, they will, indeed, be locked into an irreversible situation, in which the likes of Cameron, Draghi, Carney, Juncker, et al., swamp the UK with refugees and migrants, ransack the economy, and subject British citizens to the arbitrary, and increasingly tyrannical, rule of Brussels. What has had an impact on the wind-up of the referendum is the assassination last week of Joe Cox, a member of Parliament who opposed the Brexit. Cameron and company have shamelessly exploited her death to savage the Leave camp and advance the Remain campaign. That ploy appeared to have worked, with Remain gaining in polls, at least temporarily. However, unless there is another similarly devastating murder or terrorist attack to blame on Brexit right-wingers in the closing hours of the election eve, there is still an even chance that voters will disregard the relentless propaganda of Cameron's Project Fear, and opt to leave